The night was flawlessly planned, reflecting the Lancaster family's power. Golden decor, the scent of white roses mingling with the gentle strains of a string quartet that seemed to caress every guest's heart. None of this splendor would matter soon. Helena Lancaster, radiant in a flowing black velvet gown that whispered of both elegance and hidden sorrow, stepped into the grand foyer of her family's estate with a premonition that chilled her very soul. Every detail, from the meticulously arranged floral displays to the soft glow of crystal chandeliers, spoke of legacy and pride. Yet beneath this dazzling veneer, a quiet disquiet stirred inside her. Before we begin, please consider subscribing as your support helps us create more meaningful stories for you. Helena's eyes moved slowly across the assembled crowd, searching for familiar, comforting faces. Tonight, she had expected warmth and celebration, a reaffirmation of her years of dedication and sacrifice. For so long, she had been the pillar of strength during long, lonely nights spent by her husband Ethan's bedside, tending to him with an unwavering devotion that had cost her sleep, joy, and sometimes even her own dreams. That same devotion had made her vulnerable, and now, as fate would cruelly have it, it was about to be exploited. When the grand doors finally swung open, time itself seemed to pause. There, framed in the doorway, stood Ethan Lancaster in his impeccable tuxedo, every bit the image of suave confidence. But with him walked a striking woman in a shimmering red dress, a presence that sent an icy shiver down Helena's spine. In that suspended moment, as hushed whispers broke out among the guests like sparks in dry tinder, Helena felt the weight of betrayal descend upon her. The red-dressed woman exuded an air of defiant allure that challenged everything Helena had once believed about her shared life with Ethan. Helena's heart pounded as she observed Ethan introduce the mysterious guest with a casually indifferent remark about business matters. A single phrase, uttered as if it were nothing more than a passing comment, was enough to shatter the fragile trust Helena had built over years of selfless care. At my party, she thought bitterly, a surge of incredulity and despair coiling within her. What was meant to be a celebration of her life had instantly transformed into an arena for public humiliation. In that charged moment, the opulence surrounding her became a stark, cruel contrast to the hollowness she felt inside. As the crowd absorbed the scandal, Helena moved with measured grace through the throng. Each step was both a protest and an act of preservation, a silent declaration that, despite the wounds being inflicted upon her very spirit, she would not allow the humiliation to define her. In the quiet recesses of her mind, memories of tender moments, the long nights when she vigilantly sat by Ethan's bedside, the whispered promises of a future filled with hope, flooded back. Now, those sacrifices shone with the painful clarity of betrayal. Every act of care, once a symbol of unconditional love, became a shard of regret. The extravagant surroundings, the gentle murmur of polite conversation, and the shimmering reflections in polished surfaces all seemed to mock her vulnerability. In a secluded corner away from prying eyes, Helena allowed herself a brief moment of introspection. How can it be that all I have given, my time, my care, my very heart, should be repaid with such callous indifference? She silently demanded. The sumptuous decor and refined music that had once evoked pride now felt oppressive, as if the beauty around her were a gilded cage trapping her in memories of trust that had been so brutally betrayed. Every glimmering detail, from the soft rustle of silk to the gentle clink of crystal, resonated with the irony of a night meant for celebration turning into a crucible of despair. Yet, even as the bitterness of the moment threatened to overwhelm her, a subtle, determined flame began to kindle within. Beneath the layers of hurt and humiliation, Helena recognized a spark of resilience, a quiet strength forged in the long years of enduring sacrifices and silent struggles. The pain was undeniable, but so too was her capacity to rise above it. In the depths of that personal crisis, she began to sense the possibility of transformation. The very betrayal that had struck at the core of her being might also serve as the impetus for reinventing herself, for reclaiming the power and dignity that had always resided within her. As the evening wore on and the initial shock slowly transformed into an undercurrent of murmured judgment and regret among the guests, Helena's inner world grew ever more complex. Every stolen glance, every half-spoken word among the onlookers became fodder for her self-reflection. The night, with all its glamorous trappings, was no longer merely an event. It was a mirror reflecting the duality of human experience. Beauty and pain intertwined in an intricate dance. In that mirror, Helena saw not just the scars of betrayal, but also the raw potential for rebirth. The journey ahead, though fraught with uncertainty, promised a chance to rewrite her story. She recalled the long, solitary nights that had preceded this moment, nights when the only company was the soft hum of her thoughts and the quiet determination to care for a man who had once meant everything to her. Now, those memories were imbued with both tenderness and tragedy, and they served as the foundation upon which she would build her future. With each measured step and each whispered internal vow, she resolved that the events of this night would not define her. Instead, they would mark the beginning of a profound inner revolution, one that would transform pain into a wellspring of strength. In the final, lingering moments of that fateful evening, as the strains of the string quartet gave way to the low hum of discontent and regret, Helena Lancaster allowed herself one last look at the scene that had so cruelly unraveled her world. Her eyes, brimming with unshed tears and the fierce glimmer of resolve, met the gaze of strangers whose expressions ranged from sympathy to judgment. In that silent communion, she felt the steady pulse of her own spirit, a pulse that promised healing, renewal, and the courage to forge a new path. The dazzling lights, the sumptuous decor, and the fleeting whispers of scandal would soon be replaced by a deeper understanding of her own worth. And so, with a heart both heavy and hopeful, Helena stepped forward into the uncertain night, carrying with her the shattered remnants of what had been and the burgeoning hope of what might yet be. Every step was a silent affirmation that, though the pain was raw and the wounds deep, the journey toward reclaiming her inner truth had already begun. In the quiet aftermath of the tumultuous evening, Helena sought refuge in the solitude of her private quarters. The storm of emotions from the night's events still raged within her, yet amid the soft shadows of her dimly lit room, she found a fragile space to begin processing the betrayal. Sitting at a small desk by the window, she pored over the events in her mind, the images of the red-dressed intruder and Ethan's callous introduction replaying like a relentless loop. With trembling hands, she opened a leather-bound journal that had long served as a repository for her secret thoughts and dreams. Tonight, its pages would bear witness to the raw agony and the nascent resolve that were emerging within her. As she wrote, Helena's thoughts wandered back to the years of quiet sacrifice, a time when she had devoted every ounce of her being to a love that had, in her eyes, been both sacred and unbreakable. She recalled the countless nights spent by Ethan's side during long, feverish bouts of illness, the soft murmur of whispered reassurances in a sterile hospital room, and the silent promises exchanged in the darkness of hope. Now, each memory was tinged with an inescapable sadness, a reminder that her boundless devotion had been met with a betrayal that cut deeper than any physical wound. The pages filled slowly with her introspective musings as she questioned the very nature of love and loyalty. How is it that the one person I trusted most could turn my life into a tapestry of deceit? She wrote in a neat, trembling script. The act of writing itself became a balm, a way to externalize the pain and transform it into a tangible record of her journey. Each word was both a lament and a declaration, a recognition of the immense hurt and an assertion that she would not let it break her. Even as the room around her lay steeped in silence, the memories of the evening's scandal continued to echo. The images of graceful smiles that masked inner turmoil, of polite laughter concealing quiet heartbreak, mingled with the searing pain of betrayal. Yet, as her pen moved steadily across the paper, Helena began to perceive a faint silver lining amidst the darkness. The betrayal, as devastating as it was, had awakened within her a dormant strength, a determination to reclaim not only her dignity but also the power to redefine her own worth. Outside her window, the night was deep and starless, a perfect canvas for introspection. The cool air whispered through slightly ajar curtains, carrying with it the distant sounds of a world oblivious to her inner strife. In that intimate solitude, Helena's thoughts grew both more raw and more resolute. She resolved that the agony of this moment, however overwhelming it might be, would serve as the catalyst for a profound transformation. No longer would she allow herself to be defined solely by her sacrifices or by the cruelty of betrayal. Instead, she would use this pain as the fuel to forge a new identity, one that embraced both vulnerability and strength, sorrow and hope. With the steady scratch of her pen, the journal became a record of her metamorphosis. She wrote of the paradox of love, the way in which the very acts of selfless care could be turned into weapons against her. Yet she also chronicled the stirring of an inner power that she had long neglected. "I am not merely the sum of my sacrifices," she inscribed in a moment of clarity. "I am the architect of my own destiny, and even in the midst of betrayal, I will rebuild." Each line resonated with the quiet assurance of someone who, despite facing an unthinkable loss, had discovered the courage to stand tall. As the hours slipped by and the first hints of dawn began to edge the horizon with pale light, Helena closed her journal and sat back in quiet reflection. The anguish of the night was still there, raw and undeniable, but so too was the flicker of hope, a promise that this was not the end but rather the beginning of a new chapter. The darkness that had enveloped her heart was gradually yielding to the possibility of renewal, and with that realization came a deep, resonant conviction that she would emerge stronger from this crucible of pain. Rising from her chair, she moved to the window and gazed out at the awakening world. The muted sounds of early morning, distant birdsong, the soft rustle of leaves, seemed to echo a quiet promise of rebirth. In that gentle light, Helena felt the stirrings of resolve, a determination to reclaim the narrative of her life and to transform the betrayal into the impetus for profound personal growth. In the days that followed, Helena set herself on a deliberate course of action, a quest not merely for retribution, but for understanding the tangled web of deceit that had unraveled her life. Determined to uncover the hidden truths behind Ethan's actions, she began a painstaking investigation into the financial and personal records that had long been shrouded in mystery. Each document she encountered became a piece of a puzzle that, when assembled, would reveal a picture of calculated betrayal. Her journey took her deep into the labyrinthine corridors of her family's legacy. Late at night, by the dim light of a desk lamp, she scrutinized ledgers and correspondence with a meticulous intensity. With every faded signature and every carefully concealed number, a deeper truth emerged, one that pointed to clandestine dealings with an enigmatic organization known as Blackridge Holdings. The revelation was both a shock and a vindication. It confirmed that the humiliation of that dreadful evening was only the visible tip of a much larger, far more insidious conspiracy. Even as she pored over these documents, Helena found herself intermittently overwhelmed by waves of self-reflection. The more she uncovered, the more she questioned the very foundations of trust and loyalty that had guided her life. Have my sacrifices been nothing more than currency in a game of greed and ambition? She wondered, her thoughts echoing in the silent room. The pages of the ledgers, filled with cold, unfeeling numbers, spoke of a man who had orchestrated a dual betrayal, one that undermined both the personal and financial bonds that had once defined her world. Yet, amid the anguish of these discoveries, a quiet strength began to take root. Helena's investigation was not solely an act of retribution, it was also a journey of self-discovery. In each carefully analyzed document and every painstaking note, she found evidence not only of Ethan's treachery but also of her own resilience, The realization that she could, through her own efforts, reclaim the truth filled her with a sense of purpose. It was a turning point, a moment when the raw pain of betrayal was transformed into the resolve to rebuild her life on her own terms. Her closest confidant in this arduous endeavor was her sister, Emily, whose quiet strength and unwavering support proved to be an invaluable anchor. Together, in long hours of hushed conversation and shared determination, they sifted through the evidence, piecing together the narrative of deceit that had been hidden in plain sight. Emily's steady presence and gentle reassurances helped soothe the raw edges of Helena's anguish, reminding her that even in the depths of betrayal, the bonds of family and loyalty could provide solace and strength. As Helena delved deeper into the mystery, she also sought the expertise of Marcus, a discreet financial strategist known for his ability to navigate the murky waters of corporate subterfuge. Over several clandestine meetings in quiet cafes and secluded offices, Marcus assisted her in deciphering the complex web of transactions and backdoor deals that Ethan had orchestrated. His calm, analytical approach offered a stark contrast to the storm of emotions that had once overwhelmed her, and soon Helena found herself bolstered not only by the hard evidence of wrongdoing, but also by a newfound clarity about her own worth. Throughout this process, Helena's inner dialogue became a vital source of strength. In moments of quiet solitude between meetings and late-night research sessions, she would reflect on the paradox of her situation, the realization that every act of sacrifice had been both a gift and, in the end, a betrayal. Yet within that painful duality, she discovered the seeds of her own transformation. "I am more than the sum of my losses," she would remind herself silently, each affirmation a small beacon in the darkness. Slowly but surely, the puzzle began to take shape. Every document, every intercepted conversation, and every hidden ledger provided another piece of evidence that reinforced her growing conviction. Ethan's betrayal was not merely an act of personal infidelity, but a calculated dismantling of everything she had built. This understanding, though deeply painful, ignited in her a fierce determination to reclaim her future from the ruins of her past. In the soft light of early mornings and the quiet solitude of midnight hours, Helena's investigation evolved into a transformative journey. The act of uncovering the truth was as much about exposing Ethan's treachery as it was about rediscovering her own inner strength. With every carefully turned page and every painstakingly gathered piece of evidence, she began to see a future emerging from the shadows, a future defined by her own resolve rather than the cruelty of betrayal. As the days turned into weeks, the evidence mounted, and so did her conviction. The labyrinth of deceit that Ethan had so meticulously constructed was being unraveled thread by thread, revealing the stark reality behind the glittering facade of his life. In this process, Helena discovered that the path to healing was not found in forgetting the past, but in confronting it head-on. Every fact she uncovered, every piece of cold evidence became a stepping stone toward reclaiming her narrative and rebuilding her life with dignity and strength. In the midst of her painstaking investigation, Helena's inner world continued to evolve. With the mounting evidence of deception firmly in hand, she began to formulate a plan that would bring the full weight of the truth into the public light. The days grew longer, and the nights, though often heavy with memories of betrayal, became filled with the quiet promise of retribution. Each carefully gathered document, each verified transaction, added weight to her resolve that she would no longer be the silent victim of a man who had once commanded her trust. Helena's determination to reclaim her life took on a new dimension, as she realized that her battle was not solely against Ethan or the faceless entities behind Blackridge Holdings. It was a struggle for her own self-worth. Late one evening, as she sat before a small lamp in a secluded corner of her study, she allowed herself to reflect on the transformation that had already begun to take root. "I have spent too many years giving my all, believing that love was synonymous with sacrifice," she mused quietly, her eyes scanning the rows of meticulously organized files. "Now, I see that my value is inherent, and no act of betrayal can diminish the light that burns within me." It was in this moment of self-reflection that she resolved to take her fight into the public sphere. With Emily and Marcus at her side, Helena began planning a public revelation that would expose Ethan's web of deceit for all to see. The idea was as audacious as it was necessary. A carefully orchestrated unveiling at a high-profile charity gala where the very pillars of society would be forced to confront the ugly truth. This would not be an act of petty revenge, but rather a reclaiming of her own narrative, a declaration that her worth was not to be measured by the shallow standards of wealth or social status, but by the strength of her character. The planning was meticulous and at times fraught with anxiety. In whispered conversations and quiet strategy sessions that stretched late into the night, the trio worked to compile every shred of evidence into a coherent story, a story that would stand up to scrutiny and force even the most influential figures to acknowledge the corruption at its heart. Each detail was scrutinized, every transaction verified, until the case against Ethan was as solid as the very foundations of the Lancaster estate. Even as the preparation for the public reckoning took shape, Helena continued to nurture her inner journey. The investigation, with all its challenges and heartbreaks, had become a crucible for self-discovery. In quiet moments of introspection, she would trace the arc of her own transformation, from a woman whose love was her only strength to one who recognized that her very essence was indestructible. "This is not just about justice," she would remind herself. "It is about reclaiming the power that was always mine." The weight of her discoveries, and the realization of how deeply she had been deceived, was tempered by the steady beat of her own resolve. With each passing day, as the evidence mounted and her plan took form, she began to see a future emerging from the ruins of betrayal, a future where her voice would be heard, and her story, no longer silenced, would become a beacon for others who had suffered in silence. In the soft glow of an early morning, as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Helena felt an undeniable sense of clarity. The pain of the past, though still present, was now interwoven with the promise of a new beginning. Every act of deception uncovered, every hidden ledger brought into the light, was a step toward a future that she would shape with her own hands. And as she prepared herself for the ultimate confrontation, one that would forever change the course of her life, Helena knew that she was no longer defined by the wounds of betrayal, but by the strength and clarity of her own spirit. In the wake of her resolute decision to expose the truth, Helena moved with a newfound purpose toward the day of reckoning. The upcoming charity gala, once a symbol of superficial grandeur, was now destined to become the stage for her most important act yet, the public unveiling of Ethan's elaborate deceit. Every detail of the planned event had been carefully orchestrated, not merely as a means of retribution, but as a declaration of her autonomy and self-worth. As the day approached, Helena found herself surrounded by a close circle of allies who shared her commitment to truth and justice. Emily, ever the quiet strength, remained at her side, offering both practical assistance and the comfort of unconditional support. Marcus, with his unwavering analytical mind, ensured that every piece of evidence was meticulously organized, ready to withstand the harsh scrutiny of the public eye. Together, they formed a formidable team determined to dismantle the false image Ethan had so carefully constructed over the years. Throughout the long hours of preparation, Helena's inner dialogue was filled with reflections on the meaning of sacrifice, love, and personal integrity. In the quiet moments before each meeting, she would pause and remind herself that the journey she had embarked upon was as much about reclaiming her own identity as it was about exposing the truth. "I am more than the sum of my losses," she would think, her heart steady with resolve. "My worth is not determined by the actions of another, but by the strength I discover within myself." The atmosphere in the days leading up to the gala was charged with anticipation. Every conversation, every whispered rumor among the social elite hinted at the brewing storm of scandal. Yet for Helena, this was not a time for regret, but for action. The carefully compiled documents, the series of damning financial records, and the incontrovertible proof of Ethan's clandestine dealings with Blackridge Holdings were all laid out before her, each piece a testament to the betrayal that had marred her past. In that tangible evidence, she saw not only the reflection of Ethan's greed and duplicity, but also the roadmap to her own liberation. On the eve of the gala, as twilight gave way to a star-studded night, Helena retreated to a quiet corner of the estate. The soft glow of the moon illuminated her features as she allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. In the stillness, she contemplated the dual nature of the journey ahead, a path fraught with the potential for both public humiliation and personal redemption. "This is the moment that will define me," she murmured, a quiet vow echoing in the night air. "I will not let the shadows of betrayal dim the light of who I truly am." When the day of the gala finally arrived, the atmosphere was electric with anticipation. The venue, resplendent in its grandeur and refined elegance, served as the perfect backdrop for a confrontation that would reverberate through every corner of high society. As Helena stepped into the ballroom, every eye turned to her, not with pity or judgment, but with a respectful curiosity born of witnessing a quiet revolution in motion. With every measured step, she carried with her the weight of her journey and the unyielding determination to reclaim her narrative. In the midst of the gathering, where laughter mingled with hushed conversations and the clink of glasses punctuated the air, Helena prepared to make her stand. The carefully rehearsed plan, the solidarity of her allies, and the reservoir of evidence at her command all converged into a single, powerful moment of truth. And as she looked out upon the expectant faces before her, she knew that this was not merely a public reckoning. It was the birth of a new chapter in her life, one where her identity was defined by the strength of her own convictions rather than the betrayals of the past. When the final moment arrived, the atmosphere in the grand ballroom shifted palpably. The elegant murmur of conversation gave way to a profound silence as Helena, with unwavering resolve, took center stage. In that charged instant, every eye was fixed on her, a woman who had weathered the storms of betrayal and emerged with a quiet, indomitable strength. With a calm and measured tone, she began to speak, her words imbued with the power of hard-won truth. Every sentence was a carefully crafted tapestry, weaving together the personal and the political, the intimate sacrifices of the past and the undeniable evidence of deception. Helena spoke of the long nights spent in silent vigil, of the countless sacrifices made in the name of love, and of the ultimate betrayal that had shattered her world. She recounted, in vivid detail, the hidden transactions and secret alliances that had stripped away not only her financial security but also the very dignity she had once taken for granted. As she unveiled the evidence, meticulously organized documents, undisputed financial records, and the damning correspondence that revealed Ethan's collusion with Blackridge Holdings, the truth cascaded through the room like a tidal wave. Each piece of evidence was a testament to the calculated nature of his betrayal, and every whispered murmur in the crowd confirmed that the facade of respectability was crumbling before their eyes. In that defining moment, Helena's voice rang clear and true, a clarion call for accountability and self-empowerment. But more than the facts and figures, it was the quiet cadence of her inner reflections that resonated most deeply. In the cadence of her words lay the story of a woman who had, through pain and perseverance, discovered the strength to redefine herself. "I stand before you not as a victim, but as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit," she declared, her gaze sweeping across the stunned faces in the room. "Let this be a reminder that our worth is not measured by the betrayals we endure, but by the courage with which we rise to reclaim our truth." As her speech drew to a close, a hush fell over the gathering, a silence heavy with the recognition that nothing would ever be the same again. The oppressive weight of deceit had been lifted by the clarity of truth, and in that moment, Helena felt the first stirrings of liberation. The journey ahead was uncertain, and the scars of betrayal would not vanish overnight, but the promise of a future defined by her own resilience shone brightly in her eyes. In the soft afterglow of that historic evening, as the crowd slowly dispersed into the night, Helena lingered in the solitude of her thoughts. The echo of her words mingled with the fading strains of the string quartet, a lingering reminder of the transformative power of honesty and self-assertion. In that quiet aftermath, she realized that while the wounds of the past might never fully heal, they would serve as the foundation for a life built on strength, integrity, and an unwavering commitment to her own truth. As she stepped away from the now empty ballroom, Helena felt the steady cadence of her own heartbeat, a sound that, in its simple persistence, affirmed that she had reclaimed her power. The betrayal that had once threatened to shatter her had instead become the catalyst for her rebirth, a transformation that would forever alter the course of her life. And in that final, poignant moment, as the first light of dawn began to creep over the horizon, she embraced the promise of a new beginning with open arms and a soul determined to rise. In the soft glow of a quiet evening, as the gentle rhythm of life settles into a reflective calm, we find ourselves carrying with us the enduring spirit of Helena's journey. Her story is a testament not only to the resilience found in the face of deep betrayal, but also to the quiet, unyielding strength that each of us holds within. As we look back on the long, winding roads of our own lives, marked by both hardships and moments of profound beauty, we are reminded that every experience, every sacrifice, and every trial has woven together the rich tapestry of who we are. For those of us who have weathered many seasons, Helena's transformation resonates deeply. It is a reminder that even when life seems to have dimmed our light, there remains an inner spark that can ignite a renewed sense of purpose and dignity. Her courage to reclaim her truth, her graceful acceptance of the past, and her unwavering commitment to forging a future filled with hope are reflections of the timeless wisdom that only life's richest experiences can bestow upon us. May you find solace and inspiration in the knowledge that every challenge we face is an opportunity to grow, to learn, and to embrace the fullness of our existence. Let Helena's journey encourage you to celebrate your own path, a path marked by resilience, compassion, and the quiet power of a life well lived. As the chapters of our stories continue to unfold, remember that your worth is measured not by the scars of yesterday, but by the light you carry into tomorrow. With warmth, respect, and heartfelt gratitude for all the lessons life has shared with us, let us step forward into each new day with the assurance that our inner strength and enduring spirit will always guide us home. If this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to believe that love and hope still thrive. And don't forget to check out our other videos, where more stories of unexpected families and second chances await. Because in the end, life has a way of uniting us in the most surprising ways, and it's in those moments of unity that true healing begins.